Hi everyone, welcome back to Falcon's House. This is part 3 of my PC upgrade project. If you haven't watched the previous parts, you may want to go do that first. This part is going to be about the CPU I picked. As of when I was making this script, the fastest gaming and Premiere Pro encoding CPU is an Intel 10900K. The biggest change that happened when I was looking for a CPU was Adobe adding GPU hardware encoding. This shortened my encode times to about 1/3 of what it was previously. A 15-minute video went from 60 minutes to encode a 4K video to 20 minutes. And so a 3950X, which was the fastest mainstream encoder previously and could do a project in 18 minutes, can now do it in 6 minutes. And a 10900K went from 20 minutes to 5 minutes. The encoding times are now irrelevant to my choice because they're all fast enough for me. I'm only doing a handful of videos per week, and so as long as I didn't have like an hour-long encode, it didn't really matter. 15 minutes versus 5 minutes doesn't really change anything. So this means that the only high-end CPU usage I have is gaming. Gaming performance depends heavily upon the resolution of the display. The lower the resolution, the more the CPU matters, and at high resolutions, the GPU is the bottleneck. Even the new cards coming out are going to be limiting higher resolutions. Based on other channels' benchmarks using a 2080 Ti, the 1080p, the 10900K is between 6 and 15% faster than a 3950X. At 1440p, it is 2 to 5% faster, and at 4K, it is 0 to 2% faster. Above 1080p, the differences are fairly insignificant, only a few FPS different, a small enough difference that it is not perceptible in games with one exception that I'll get into later. Right now, I have an Alienware AW3420DW 3440 by 1440 ultra-wide monitor, which is 30% more pixels than a 16 by 9 1440p monitor, so my frames per second is somewhere between the 1440p and 4K benchmarks. In addition to that, I have an Eve Spectrum 4K 144Hz monitor and an HP Reverb G2 pre-ordered. The VR headset is 2160 by 2160 per eye at 90 Hz and is about halfway between the monitors for how hard it is to get max FPS. So because I am gaming on hard-to-drive panels, there wasn't much benefit to choosing the 10900K. I chose an AMD Ryzen 3700X, which isn't even the top AMD CPU, but gaming performance doesn't scale very well past 8 cores yet on AMD. The CPU is $285 and came with Assassin's Creed Valhalla for free, which I was going to buy anyway, so my net price is $225. This CPU should game as well as the more expensive CPUs because of how it works. It has 2 CCXs on a single CCD, and so communication between the CCXs requires going to the I/O die on the chip and back, which is constricted by the Infinity Fabric speed. The higher-end CPUs with 12 or 16 cores have 2 CCDs, and all the communication between them has to go to the I/O die, potentially slowing down performance. The other big thing to take into account is that the next-gen Ryzen 4000 CPUs are not using 2x4 CCXs per CCD. It's going to be a unified 8 CPU core architecture with faster speed, so it'll be less I/O to the I/O die, and the I/O, they're expecting that the performance will increase by 200 or 300 megahertz, increasing the performance for anything that does have to go there. So they should be between 15 to 20% faster at the same clock speeds, plus have a 5% clock speed increase based on the current leaks. If the new CPUs are a lot faster, I'll end up selling this CPU and buying one of those. I expect that I could get about $200 for this 3700X, and then effectively I'm paying about $25 a month for a 4 to 5 month rental of the CPU. Not $25 a month, $25 total, about $5 a month for the CPU rental effectively. So the one exception to frame rates that could force me to get the best possible Ryzen 4000 CPU is VR. The Reverb G2 has a very high resolution for a headset and is 90 Hz. This will be very hard to hit, and lower FPS can induce motion sickness, and the panel will drop to 60 FPS if it can't reach 90. So if a game was 85 FPS, it would display at 60. So getting those last few FPS to stay over 90 is worth it. So I could just turn down settings, and I probably will have to on a lot of games, but my hope is to be able to play as many games as possible at the highest resolution possible with the best settings, especially in the racing simulators, which is why I'm primarily getting this headset. Normal monitors have G-Sync support, and they can vary their frame rate, and it won't cause any motion sickness, so will not be a problem on those models. And I'm probably going to have plenty of comparison videos comparing 1440p 120 to 4K and trying to see how close I can actually get the FPS on 4K versus the ultra-wide settings, and which games will work better in one and versus the other. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.